Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be picking up where we left off in the first book to show comparison video. The last thing we spoke about was Ned and Kat's disagreement about Jon. Ned wanted him to stay at Winterfell and Kat wanted Jon to go. The conversation was pretty much ended when Maester Luwin chimed in to let them know that Jon expressed interest in taking the Black. Kat loved this idea since it meant that Jon, quote, would father no sons who might someday contest with her own grandchildren for Winterfell, unquote. However, Ned wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea and had this to say. Jon is so young. If he asked this when he was a man grown, that would be one thing, but a boy of 14? And so Maester Luwin goes on to say, a harsh sacrifice. Yet these are hard times, my lord. His road is no crueler than yours or your lady's. So eventually, Ned agrees to sending Jon to the wall, but he doesn't have peace about it. The book tells us that, it was troubling for him to make the decision. But, after going through all of that and Kat not wanting him to be there, I guess that was the best. Ned eventually figured that might have been the best thing for Jon, but he didn't like the fact that he was so young. So what I like here is that you see that Ned was indeed protective of Jon, and I believe that Kat hated Jon even more so because of it. The book also tells us that she hated the fact that Jon looked so much like Ned even more than her own sons, and I'm sure that made things worse. I'd also like to mention that Kat wasn't allowed to ask Ned about Jon. There was a time when she asked him about a rumor she heard regarding a woman named Ashara Dane. This was Sir Arthur Dane's sister. Sir Arthur Dane was also known as a legendary fighter of King Aerys's Kingsguard, and also known as the Sword of the Morning. Anyway, he had a sister named Ashara Dane, and she was rumored to be Jon's mother. But when Kat asked Ned about it, his words were, "Never ask me about Jon. He is my blood, and that is all you need to know." The book lets us know that Ned's tone was as cold as ice, and it was the only time he had ever frightened Catelyn. It was also mentioned that whoever Jon's mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely, because nothing Catelyn said would persuade him to send Jon away. So anyway, we're going to move right on to comparison number 3. We're just going to actually continue with this Catelyn Stark and Jon Snow drama. And comparison number 3 is Jon stands up to Lady Stark. So here we find Cat by Bran's bedside after he was pushed from a tower by Jaime Lannister. Jon comes to say goodbye to Bran before leaving for the wall, and this is how that exchange went. "I came to see Bran," Jon said, "to say goodbye." Her face did not change. Her long auburn hair was dull and tangled. She looked as though she had aged 20 years. "You've said it. Now go away." Part of him wanted only to flee, but he knew that if he did, he might never see Bran again. He took a nervous step into the room. "Please," he said. Something cold moved in her eyes. "I told you to leave," she said. "We don't want you here." Once that would have sent him running. Once that might even have made him cry. Now it only made him angry. He would be a sworn brother of the Night's Watch soon, and face worse dangers than Catelyn Tully Stark. "He's my brother," he said. "Shall I call the guards?" "Call them," Jon said, defiant. "You can't stop me from seeing him." He crossed the room, keeping the bed between them, and looked down on Bran where he lay. Well, all right, Jon. I love how Jon takes his stand here, but as I read along, I really got to see how nasty Kat was to Jon, because before he left the room, she had one more cruel thing to say to him. Let's read. "I wanted him to stay here with me," Lady Stark said softly. Jon watched her, wary. She was not even looking at him. She was talking to him, but for a part of her, it was as though he were not even in the room. I prayed for it, she said dully. He was my special boy. I went to the sept and prayed 7 times to 7 faces of God that Ned would change his mind and leave him here with me. Sometimes prayers are answered. John did not know what to say. It wasn't your fault, he managed after an awkward silence. Her eyes found him. They were full of poison. I need none of your absolution, bastard. John lowered his eyes. She was cradling one of Bran's hands. He took the other, squeezed it. Fingers like the bones of birds. Goodbye, he said. He was at the door when she called out to him. John, she said. He should have kept going, but she had never called his name before. He turned to find her looking at his face, as if she were seeing it for the first time. Yes, he said. It should have been you, she told him. Then she turned back to Bran and began to weep, her whole body shaking with sobs. Man, that was pretty harsh, and no wonder Jon wanted to get the heck out of Winterfell. But enough of Jon and Cat and Ned and, well, not really Ned, because moving on to comparison 4, Cercei forbids King Robert to joust. Now, in the show, we see Ned talking King Robert out of fighting in the melee. However, in the books, it was Cercei who first forbade Robert to fight. Now, the interesting thing about this difference is that it was brought to Ned's attention by Lord Varys that the Lannisters had hoped to kill King Robert during the melee. Without reading much, I'm just going to summarize their conversation, which you can find on page 320. So, Lord Varys tells Ned that King Robert is a fool and is doomed if Ned doesn't save him. He goes on to tell Ned that today was a close call, as the Lannisters had hoped to kill Robert during the melee and wanted it to look like an accident. And Ned did not believe that even Cercei would have a hand in such a plot, being that she forbade Robert to fight in the first place. But Varys reminded him that the sure way to get King Robert to do something was to forbid him not to do it. Varys also added that Cercei forbade King Robert in front of his brother, his knights, and half the court. So long story short, guys, the book lets us know that Cercei had planned to kill Robert long before the infamous boar incident and long before Ned confronted her to let her know he'd learned the truth about who really fathered her children, which was totally stupid for him to do, by the way. I've actually just finished reading that part, and it was actually very similar to how it went down in the show. The only notable difference is when Cercei, it seemed as though Cercei was coming on to Ned. She touched his face and his hair, and I'm going to read a little bit of that on page 487. So basically, Ned is letting Cercei know that, you know what I must do, so basically, he's going to tell Robert. And so she says, a true man does what he will, not what he must. Her fingers brushed lightly against his thigh, the gentlest of promises. The realm needs a strong hand. Joff will not come of age for years. No one wants war again, least of all me. Her hand touched his face, his hair. If friends can turn to enemies, enemies can become friends. Your wife is 1,000 leagues away, and my brother has fled. Be kind to me, Ned. I swear to you, you shall never regret it. Did you make the same offer to Jon Arryn? She slapped him. So, yeah, from what I'm getting, it seems as though she was coming on to Ned. The reference that his wife was, leagues away, and then her lover, aka Jaime Lannister, also her twin brother, was away. She's basically letting it be known, in my opinion. That's what I see. She's touching his legs. She's touching his face and his hair. She's coming on to him pretty much saying, hey, we could work some things out. We can keep each other company. So that is, to me, that's a big difference. Other people might not feel that it was a big difference, but I feel like that's a pretty big difference. You never thought of Cercei coming on to Ned. So they left that out of the show. But anyway, In the show, they make it seem as though it was Ned's confrontation with Cercei that caused the plot to kill Robert to be set in motion. However, in the book, we see that the plot was developed way before then. Anyway, I'd like to do a sidebar and mention something interesting that Robert told Ned during a private conversation. Now, before Lord Varys went to warn Ned about the Lannisters' plot to kill Robert, Ned went to talk Robert out of jousting just a few hours earlier. During that conversation, Robert made a confession to Ned, and this is what he said. Robert says, "Let me tell you a secret, Ned. More than once, I've dreamed of giving up the crown. Take ship for the free cities with my horse and my hammer. Spend my time warring and whoring. That's what I was made for. The sellsword king. How the singers would love me. You know what stops me? The thought of Joffrey on the throne, with Cercei standing behind him, whispering in his ear, 'My son.' How could I have made a son like that, Ned?" "He's only a boy," Ned said awkwardly. He had small liking for Prince Joffrey, but he could hear the pain in Robert's voice. "Have you forgotten how wild you were at his age?" "It would not trouble me if the boy was wild, Ned. You don't know him as I do." He sighed and shook his head. "Ah, perhaps you are right. Jon despaired of me often enough. Yet I grew into a good king." Anyway, so I really enjoyed this confession by Robert because we get to see that Robert is aware that his son wasn't wrapped too tight. A few lines up also revealed Robert apologizing to Ned about what happened to Sansa's wolf, Lady. Robert even told Ned that he knew Joffrey was lying about the whole thing and that he'd stake his soul on it. It's just nice to see that Robert wasn't as foolish as everyone thought he was, and that he knew his son was a psychopath in the making. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment below and feel free to point out any differences you've noticed yourselves. In the meantime, I'm going to continue reading so I can find more differences to compare and upload to the next video. Please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, please don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be the first to receive notifications when a new video is uploaded. See you guys next time and be blessed. Take care.